All right, let's get this party started. Welcome everyone to the 2021 Lac-Saint-Louis Meet the Candidates event. My name is Pierre Borslawski, liaison agent at the Table Quartier de Sud-Ouest de l'Île. I am joined by Cassandra, as well as the rest of our TQS team to help run the debate. It's a great honor to be here today with the candidates to discuss the key topics that are important for the West Island. But before we begin, I would like to take a moment to remember that the Kanehaga Nation has been the long custodian of this land for nearly 8,000 years before settlers arrived. We must ally and learn from them and build relationships with Indigenous people and other marginalized groups to realize the West Island future that is resilient, sustainable, and equitable.
Bienvenue à tous et toutes à l'événement Rencontrer mes candidates fédérales de 2021 pour la circonscription de Lac-Saint-Louis. Je m'appelle Cassandra et je suis la chargée de projet pour le dossier de la sécurité alimentaire à la table de quartier sud de l'ouest de l'île. Je suis accompagnée ce soir par Piotr ainsi que le reste de l'équipe de la TQSOI. C'est un grand honneur pour nous d'être ici ce soir avec les candidats et candidates pour discuter des sujets clés importants pour l'ouest de l'île.
Tonight, we are joined in alphabetical order by Anne Francis of the Conservative Party, Jonathan Gray of the NDP, Milan Cohen-Mancini of the Green Party, Afiat Lassie from the PPC Party, Rémi Leboeuf from the Bloc Québécois, and Francis Scarpaleggio from the Liberal Party. We thank them all for being here tonight. This event is being broadcast through our YouTube page. We ask those who are watching from home be respectful in the chat and refrain from abusive language towards the candidates and each other. Closed captioning is available on YouTube. There is also a link in the description of this live stream for viewers to share their thoughts about the event.
Cet événement est diffusé en direct sur notre page YouTube. Nous demandons à tous et toutes qui nous rejoignent ce soir d'être respectueux et respectueuses dans le chat et de s'abstenir d'utiliser un langage abusif envers les candidats ou entre eux.
All right, let's start with a presentation of candidates. Each candidate will have 3 minutes to present themselves in the language of their choice and what brought them to the politics in West Island and what their priority for the Lac-Saint-Louis riding is. We'll begin in alphabetical order with Anne Francis. Ms. Francis, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Bonjour ou bonsoir à tout le monde. Comme introduit, je m'appelle Anne Francis. Je suis longtemps résident de l'ouest de l'île. I have lived here most of my life, raised my children here. I work in the West Island. I've been in various areas around the West Island. And I'm very passionate about the West Island and about families. And what led me to be involved is my involvement in the community and some community members and some of the riding members who asked me to run. You know, I'm very involved and I love current events, but politics is not really what I want to do. And I kept getting the request and I reviewed things with my family and we said, you know what, when you care this much about the West Island, it's good to get involved this way. Alors, je me suis impliquée dans la dernière élection de 2019. Alors, c'est ma deuxième élection. Je suis bénévole dans l'ouest de l'île. Je travaille sur le conseil d'administration de certains organismes de l'ouest de l'île. J'ai toujours été bénévole. I've volunteered with my boys' school and with different activities in different groups, sports groups and sports activities, as well as other activities within the West Island. I care a lot about families. I feel we really need to do a lot to support families. They are struggling. They were struggling before. People think of the West Island as an affluent, well-off area, but we do know that there's poverty, there is food insecurity. There are a lot of issues that face youth, especially in the West Island, and that's really what I want to tackle. Mental health is an enormous issue, especially since the pandemic. And so I really want to make sure that that's something that we address as a government. We've got a great policy, the Conservative Party, to include mental health, to beef up the supplies and resources that are put in place for mental health, and to ensure or encourage employers to also provide mental health services and to include mental health in the different supports that they give to their employees. Also, we live on an island surrounded by water. Our riding is particularly surrounded by water. And so in terms of the environment, that's something that I care a lot about. And I think we have a lot of work to do. We still have laws that allow the dumping of wastewater into our lakes. And that's just something that in 2021, I find no longer tenable. We really should be able to beef up our infrastructure for things like the environment and recycling and composting so that we're not doing things like dumping wastewater in the lake. I know that we're supposed to have 3 minutes and there's supposed to be a timer. I don't actually see it on the screen, so I'm going to wrap it up now and address any other issues through questions that come up. Thank you, everyone. Merci beaucoup d'être venu ce soir. C'est très important d'être impliqué et votre implication en tant d'électeur aussi est beaucoup appréciée.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Ms. Francis. Well, sorry about the timer. We won't have a timer on screen. I'll have it shown and I'll interrupt at that worst case. Next up, Jonathan Gray from the NDP. Go ahead, sir.
Hi, thank you. I was going to press the buzzer, but I couldn't find it because I think she passed her 3 minutes. Bonsoir à tous et à toutes. Good evening to everyone. I'm Jonathan Gray, the NDP candidate for this riding of Lac-Saint-Louis. Thank you for allowing us to meet with you and discuss these very important issues. The NDP, in my opinion, is the party which has people and community as central to a healthy and happy environment. As we go through the various topics tonight, I hope you will see that the NDP is best suited to work and support these community initiatives. What brought me to politics, I didn't know it was going to be politics, but it was issues I was concerned about. And politicking is a means of getting your hands involved and making big changes. And that's why I wanted to get involved in this. And my main concerns were the environment. We're in a climate crisis right now. We need to do action, make actions happen now and not just talk about them anymore. And in the West Island in particular, which we'll come to later, there's a small topic later on, is issues like saving Fairview Forest and other green spaces and no longer cutting down these for future developments, but rather, well, I'll explain later. And that's all for now. I'll buzz myself out.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Mr. Gray. Next up is Mr. Conan Mancini from the Green Party. Go ahead, sir.
Hi, my name is Milan Conan-Mancini. This is my second time running. Last time was in the 2019 election. This time's a little bit different with such short notice and maybe my life a little bit more hectic than it was last time. Unfortunately, I was unable to dedicate the amount of time I did to the previous campaign and decided this time to run a $0 campaign. So it's brought new challenges. It's been pretty interesting. Trying to reach out to people without spending a dime. There's no posters, there's no pamphlets, there's no pizza party for people who will help me go door to door. Lots of things like that, but unfortunately, fortunately, it's still given me the opportunity to go and meet the people in my area, which is probably the biggest reason why I went into join politics, is to find out what my neighbors think, to find out what they believe, to understand the needs of the community. In 2019, it was probably the first time I had ever spoken to the majority of my neighbors. And I've been living on the island of Montreal for the last 30 years or so. Before that, I was living in East End. So I've been living in the West Island for the last 30 years. And it was strange. It was really nice. Finally being able to connect people, having a reason to talk to people. And I really, the three main parts of my platform are obviously the environment as the Green Party. I think that's the reason that I joined, was because of the environment and Elizabeth May's bulldogged aggressiveness in the debates regarding climate change. It's one of the things that inspired me to join. I really think that we need a media and privacy strategy for the internet. And I also would love to implement a pharmacare and dental health strategy, as well as guaranteed livable income, as I believe it will solve many current and future problems that will arise due to technological advancements. Thanks for giving me the time, and thanks for participating, everybody, especially those of you in the audience.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Mancini. Next up is Ms. Lassie, please.
Thank you. Bonsoir. Bonsoir tout le monde. Merci pour l'invitation aux organisateurs. Je m'appelle Afia Lassie et je représente le Parti populaire du Canada. C'est ma première fois en politique. Pour parler de moi, je suis une fille d'ici, une femme d'ici. Je suis née dans le comté à Pointe-Claire. J'ai étudié ici à John Abbott. Je travaille également à Lac-Saint-Louis. Et ce qui m'a fait, ce qui est entré dans mon cœur, en fait, pour entrer en politique, c'est juste l'état dans lequel le pays se trouve, non seulement au niveau économique, mais l'absence de débat au Parlement, l'absence d'idées. Donc, c'est vraiment la position que le Parti populaire a sur la liberté d'expression et l'échange d'idées. Donc, j'ai hâte de parler à mes confrères sur cette plateforme. Merci beaucoup encore.
Merci beaucoup, Ms. Lassie. Next up, Monsieur Leboeuf, s'il vous plaît.
Merci beaucoup. Alors, bonjour à tous. Je suis Rémi Leboeuf. Je suis le candidat pour le Bloc québécois pour cette élection. À vrai dire, c'est ma première élection. J'ai seulement 22 ans, donc c'est une première expérience pour moi, une expérience que j'espère qui sera très enrichissante. Du moins, jusqu'à maintenant, elle l'est tout à fait comme je l'espérais. J'étudie actuellement en sciences politiques à l'Université de Montréal. Je dirais que ce qui m'a amené dans le domaine de la politique, c'est depuis tout jeune une implication dans le domaine communautaire, dans le domaine associatif. Aussi, j'ai eu de merveilleux professeurs, que ce soit au primaire ou au secondaire, qui m'ont beaucoup appris, qui m'ont donné le goût, surtout en histoire, de m'intéresser au Québec, de m'intéresser à sa langue, à sa culture, à son histoire. Alors, quand on m'a donné l'occasion pour l'élection de cette année de défendre le Québec à Ottawa, j'ai tout de suite sauté sur l'occasion. Je me suis dit que ça serait une occasion en or d'apprendre, d'avoir de l'expérience et aussi de pouvoir faire avancer le Québec. Je dirais que ce qui m'intéresse le plus dans le Bloc québécois, c'est oui, l'aspect, disons, plus national, défendre le Québec, défendre sa langue, défendre ses décisions, pouvoir défendre le choix de l'Assemblée nationale, mais c'est aussi l'environnement. Parfois, certains analystes se plaisent à dire qu'on est plus vert que les verts. C'est une formule que j'aime bien. On a un programme environnemental très, très, très élaboré. Le Québec, qui est dans le Canada, je crois, un acteur majeur positif pour la lutte au changement climatique. Alors, je suis heureux de pouvoir défendre la plateforme environnementale du Bloc québécois. Et dans la circonscription de Lac-Saint-Louis, les dossiers que je crois qui sont prioritaires, ce serait le logement. Partout, dans Lac-Saint-Louis ou dans Montréal en général, le logement, l'accès au logement pour les familles, pour les étudiants est devenu très compliqué. Alors, c'est un enjeu sur lequel il va falloir travailler très fort. Et comme je viens de le dire aussi, la lutte au changement climatique, je pense qu'à l'échelle locale, municipale et même à l'échelle d'une circonscription, on est capable de faire des changements, des actions qui pourront amener un impact positif sur la lutte plus globale à travers le Québec et le Canada pour avoir un environnement plus sain et diminuer la pollution et les émissions de gaz à effet de serre. Merci beaucoup.
Monsieur Leboeuf. Okay, last but not least, Mr. Francis Capelleggio, please.
Thank you. Well, it's a pleasure to be here with the other candidates. This is a valuable process of exchange of perspectives and ideas, and it hopefully will be useful to those who are listening and watching this evening in terms of the choice that they will be making on September 20th. I believe that government is, well, obviously about decisions that impact us as individuals and as communities fairly on a day-to-day basis. And I think the role of politics, the role of politicians, whether you be at the municipal level or the provincial level or federal level, is to translate the priorities and concerns of your constituents into priorities in the legislature in which you sit. So I've always been very proud to be a grassroots representative. I was not parachuted into this riding. I was not considered a star candidate when I first ran, and so I've always maintained a very close relationship with my constituents, and this has given me a sense of the priorities and concerns of of the people that I represent. Alors, je maintiens des relations très étroites avec mes concitoyens et concitoyennes et cela me permet quand même de traduire leurs préoccupations dans l'arène fédérale à Ottawa. Lorsqu'on est député ou lorsqu'on est représentant, peu importe le contexte, peu importe la législature, il faut suivre beaucoup de dossiers, beaucoup d'enjeux à la fois, mais quand même, c'est une bonne idée de se concentrer sur un enjeu ou deux où on peut mettre nos efforts là, pour devenir, si on peut, assez spécialisé afin de pousser certaines idées. Alors, dans mon cas, je m'intéresse beaucoup à l'environnement. So I'm very interested in the environment. As I said, one has to follow many issues at once in elected politics, but it's useful to concentrate on a couple of issues that you can try to push forward. In my case, it has been the environment, more specifically freshwater policy. I say freshwater as opposed to oceans. And also, I've been very interested over the years in the issue of palliative care.
10 seconds.
3 minutes? Is that?
Almost 3 minutes.
Okay, ça passe vite. Ça passe vite.
Sorry about that, Mr. Cavallo. Yes, so pay attention. I'll warn you, but yes, I'll warn you at the 10-second mark for all the candidates as well. Yeah. Okay, moving on to question period. Cassandra.
Oui, merci. Alors, un appel à questions a été lancé par le biais de nos réseaux sociaux. Pardon, un instant. Oui, par le biais de nos réseaux sociaux de la TQSOI, et nous avons reçu de nombreuses questions sur Facebook et aussi par courriel. Tous les candidats et candidates auront 2 minutes pour répondre aux 4 questions générales du public. L'ordre dans lequel les candidates auront l'occasion de répondre a été généré de manière aléatoire. Alors, la première question vient d'Anne-Marie. Elle dit « Je suis résidente de Pointe-Claire et je travaille dans le milieu communautaire de l'ouest de l'île depuis plus de 10 ans. On y trouve près de 80 organismes communautaires qui emploient près de 240 personnes. Le travail des organismes communautaires est essentiel. Par contre, ceux-ci se retrouvent souvent avec des ressources financières très limitées, ainsi qu'un manque de reconnaissance en ce qui a trait à leur impact, entre autres. Anne-Marie aimerait savoir de quelle manière concrète les candidats et candidates proposent soutenir les organismes communautaires de Lac-Saint-Louis et de quelle façon ils ou elles s'impliqueront dans la vie communautaire de leur circonscription si ils ou elles sont élus. Nous commencerons avec M. Gray.
Merci pour la question. C'était vraiment une bonne question. Et si je suis élu comme candidat pour l'arrondissement de Lac-Saint-Louis, oui, on va s'occuper des entreprises petites, moyennes et gros, mais surtout, on va s'occuper des petits on va baisser les impôts. On va donner aussi des incitations pour encourager la continuation des entreprises et les actions lucratifs pour donner le travail à ceux dans la région. And we would, of course, encourage sustainable businesses and provide those the opportunity to employ those in the neighborhood. How would I be involved? I would be involved by ensuring that concerns of the citizens are met and that we deal with whatever does come up. And I guess I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ensuite, Monsieur Conamancini.
Great. All right. So in order to support communities, you have to be part of one, obviously. And I've been a part of our community for many years. I'm actually, until recently, was working with the TQSOI. I believe if I were elected, I would continue working with them, perhaps in a more removed capacity instead of helping, more about listening and being able to help. And I think that there's lots of capacity for federal governments to be able to help municipalities. We can provide direct funding by, for instance, supporting housing first initiatives and other successful models of improving health outcomes. Something like a guaranteed livable income will eliminate a lot of the need for things like specific funding for resources for people who are lacking funds. Basically, just sometimes, people can't afford their medication, they can't afford food daily, they can't afford their rent, things like that. That all adds to mental health stress. So there's like a cascading effect of problems that people have that then lead them to rely on their communities instead of helping others. You're then, having to rely on your neighbors and everything. If you're in a strong position, both mental health, financially, everything like that, you can become a supporter yourself. So by providing federal funding directly to the Canadian people, I think that it would eliminate a lot of personal problems, eliminate a lot of stress on these community organizations. We also plan on increasing access to shelters by investing $40 million over 4 years to the shelter enhancement program that'll provide 2,100 new and renovated spaces in first stage shelters and hundreds of spaces in transition housing. So once again, just alleviating community resources so that people who need other help can get it. And thank you for my time.
Thank you. À la prochaine, ça sera Madame Lassie. Votre micro, Madame Lassie.
Désolée, merci. Donc pour moi, je pense que le plus important, c'est vraiment d'être à l'écoute. Il y a au-dessus de 80 organisations, donc à mon niveau, ce serait d'être une voix pour eux au Parlement, de m'impliquer personnellement à faire, par exemple, des levées de fonds et trouver des moyens qui vont leur permettre de réaliser leur programme. Donc, en m'impliquant par le bénévolat, en fait, je suis toujours disponible. Donc, ce sera à peu près ça pour moi.
Merci. Prochain, Monsieur Scarpaleggia.
Oui, bonjour. Effectivement, vous avez raison. Là, nous avons un réseau de groupes communautaires. Nous avons un filet social assez extraordinaire et bien développé à travers les années, qui fait l'envie, je pense, de plusieurs régions, plusieurs des régions qui nous entourent ici dans l'ouest de l'île. Alors moi, je travaille avec ces groupes depuis un bon bout de temps et j'appuie ces groupes en participant le plus possible à leurs activités. So I try to attend as many activities that are organized by many of our nonprofit groups as I can, but I also help them access government programs, first of all, by keeping them informed of what programs exist and what programs are being added. And quite a few have been added during the pandemic to help community groups help the community. So I help them access government programs, and also I help by knowing these community groups, I can help them access summer subsidies for summer jobs. Many of these groups apply for summer job funding under the Canada Summer Jobs Program. And so through that program, we help support the needs of these groups. So I participate as much as I can in their activities. I help them access programs, and I keep them informed of the programs that are out there and that are being added quite frequently.
Thank you. Juste un petit note que nous avons enlevé le cadran de l'écran juste pour que les participants peuvent voir un peu mieux de plus grandes photos chacun de nos candidats. So just as a quick note that the timer is no longer on the screen, only so viewers can see each candidate in full instead of seeing the timer, which takes up most of the screen. So, finally, dernière personne pour cette question, Miss Anne Francis.
Hi, thank you very much. C'est une excellente question. Et on est vraiment gâtés dans l'ouest de l'île parce qu'on a vraiment des bons organismes de communautaires. C'est critique pour toute communauté d'avoir ces organismes-là. Et c'est incroyable le numéro de bénévoles qui sont là parce qu'on parle dans la question de gens qui sont des employés, mais ils sont aussi soutenus par un nombre de bénévoles qui est incroyable. Comme j'ai indiqué dans mon introduction, et je pense que ça l'est pour tous les candidats et candidates. On n'est pas candidat ou candidate pour avoir une autre carrière, on est là pour servir. Alors, je pense qu'on est tous impliqués d'une façon ou autre déjà dans nos communautés. Je sais que je le suis, je l'étais toujours. Je suis sur le conseil d'administration d'un organisme dans l'ouest de l'île qui s'appelle Ricochet, qui est le sœur de Ajoie, Action Jeunesse de l'ouest de l'île. Et on est vraiment axé sur trouver des ressources pour des gens, pour trouver de l'habitation. We know that housing is in a crisis right now. There is a shortage. It is extremely expensive. Not everyone is able to afford housing. There are homeless people in the West Island, surprisingly. For many people, they don't know that, and they don't know that there exists food insecurity. Alors, soutenir ces organismes-là, c'est critique. C'est certain que, comme un député, une des choses qui serait très importante, I put my own timer on, une des choses qui serait importante, ça serait de leur donner de l'information comment effectivement avoir accès à certains fonds qui existent dans le gouvernement et des différents programmes, mais il faut aussi soutenir ces organismes-là dans différentes manières. We need to increase funding available to these organisms, these organizations, and support them not just as an MP, but I think throughout all of our activities. And many of us, I'm sure, already do that, and we would continue to do that even as MPs.
Thank you. Pardon, le dernier pour cette question, c'est Rémi. Monsieur Leboeuf, allez-y.
Oui, merci. Pas de problème pour l'erreur, c'est pas grave. L'importance des organismes communautaires, je la connais assez bien. J'ai participé à de nombreux organismes quand j'étais à l'école secondaire, au cégep. J'ai fait de la francisation avec des nouveaux arrivants. J'ai participé dans des organismes qui aidaient les familles avec des banques alimentaires. Alors, je connais très bien l'importance des organismes communautaires, surtout en temps de pénurie de main-d'œuvre. On a tendance à l'oublier, mais ces organismes-là font un travail crucial et des fois, ils remplacent des services qui devraient être assurés par le gouvernement ou par les municipalités. Donc, l'impact des organismes communautaires est très, très important. Pour soutenir les organismes, il faut s'assurer qu'il y a un financement adéquat et c'est souvent ça qui fait défaut. Souvent, ils ne savent pas qu'ils ont droit à certaines aides. Souvent, ils ne les reçoivent pas non plus. Ça peut être un problème récurrent. Alors, il faut s'assurer que sur les 3 paliers de gouvernement, donc municipal, provincial et fédéral, il y a une aide adéquate pour les organismes qui font un travail communautaire important. Et pour ce qui est de l'aide directe que je pourrais apporter, c'est sûr qu'il faut les aider au niveau financier, mais il faut aussi les aider avec une exposition, disons, pas médiatique, mais dans la communauté, s'assurer que les gens savent que les organismes existent, qu'ils peuvent s'y engager pour encourager le bénévolat. Et c'est sûr que si jamais j'ai la chance de devenir député de Lac-Saint-Louis, je vais m'impliquer dans les organismes communautaires et j'aimerais bien aussi m'impliquer dans le domaine de l'environnement qui me tient beaucoup à cœur.
Okay, merci beaucoup, Monsieur Leboeuf. Next question is about affordability and cost of living. Our second question is from Ralph. Housing in the riding of Lac-Saint-Louis is primarily high cost of family dwellings. The average cost of a single-family home has risen well over $600,000 in the area, and more than 1 in 3 tenant households contribute more than 30% of their income in household costs. This is considered unaffordable. Amidst the national housing crisis, our local supply of nonprofit and low-cost cooperative housing stock is far below the needs of our residents. Would you assertively support increasing cooperative, community, and nonprofit housing projects that give pride, autonomy, and higher living standards to alleviate the impacts of the housing crisis? We'll start with you, Mr. Leboeuf, again.
Oui, alors, la pénurie de logements touche pas seulement Lac-Saint-Louis, ça touche tous les quartiers de Montréal. En tant qu'étudiant, j'ai expérimenté les difficultés de trouver un logement à Montréal, c'est extrêmement difficile. Les prix sont assez élevés, ça devient totalement inabordable. Le Bloc québécois propose dans sa plateforme de faire un réinvestissement massif dans le logement social. Et pour ça, il faudrait que le gouvernement fédéral investisse 1% de son budget total en logement social, en rénovation, en construction ou en réhabilitation de logements. Ce qui pourrait être fait aussi également, c'est freiner la spéculation immobilière qui a lieu notamment dans le centre-ville de Montréal, qui est assez, pas juste à Montréal, dans tous les centres-villes, qui est assez dommageable pour le marché de l'immobilier, qui fait grimper les prix artificiellement. Et pour ce qui est des organismes communautaires ou des coopératives de logement, proprement parler, on propose aussi la création d'un fonds d'acquisition pour les organismes communautaires, les coopératives ou les OBNL, de sorte que si jamais des logements doivent être construits par des organismes, ils puissent avoir soit des réductions d'impôts, des réductions de taxes ou des subventions qui pourraient les aider à accomplir leur mission. Mais c'est un problème global auquel il faut s'attaquer sur l'île de Montréal et particulièrement à Lac-Saint-Louis.
Merci beaucoup. Madame Lass, s'il te plaît.
D'accord, donc pour nous, c'est ça. Donc la pénurie et la crise du logement touchent vraiment tout le Canada. Donc au niveau du Parti populaire, ce qu'on propose premièrement, c'est de réduire la cible d'inflation qui est présentement de 2% à 0%. Ça va freiner l'inflation dans tous les secteurs, y compris celui du logement, parce que l'inflation est devenue un problème critique dans tous les secteurs de l'économie. Parce qu'il y a de l'impression d'argent, on imprime des billets pour financer les déficits et ça devient grave et ça fait monter les prix. Et également, un gouvernement du Parti populaire va collaborer avec les provinces pour lutter contre la spéculation et le blanchiment d'argent qui fausse les prix. Et parfois, c'est fait avec des acheteurs qui ne sont pas ici au Canada et puis ça affecte le marché immobilier. Donc ça, c'est les solutions qu'on propose au Parti populaire.
Oui, merci beaucoup. Prochain temps, Mr. Gray, s'il te plaît.
Great, thank you very much. Yep, it's a very important question and something that needs to be dealt with. I absolutely support, our party absolutely supports the idea of nonprofit social co-op housing. We support the concept of low affordable housing. Spending over 30% or more of your budgetary income is difficult and unattainable and is not it's considered unaffordable. We plan on building an additional 500,000 units, which could be will be affordable starter units for younger families. Another idea was of brown projects, which those are not talked of very much. They're considered very efficient and responsible ways to rebuild over existing previously developed lands rather than virgin lands. So again, nonprofit housing is a very affordable practice, which will build good communities. I just had a little note here, sorry. So the starter units, 100,000. We also propose waiving the GST and HST on future constructions of these particular developments. And another thing, as well as Monsieur Leboeuf pointed out, it's not just unique to the West Island and Lac-Saint-Louis riding, but it does occur in Montreal. It is surprising that it happens here in the West Island, but it does exist. Even those with those nice, pretty houses, some of those people are having difficulty paying for their monthly bills, and they're going from check to check, which is surprising. We also propose a 20% foreign buyers tax so that properties are not bought up and left, units are not bought up and left vacant, which does not help anybody who's looking for a home. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gray. Next up, Ms. Francis.
Thank you. It's an issue that I actually care very much about. It's why I'm on the board of directors of Ricochet. We are really, in terms of what we do as an organization, the goal really is to provide housing for those that are facing homelessness, short-term housing, medium-term housing, get people to get started on ownership, because homelessness, shockingly, is a real issue in the West Island. The Conservative Party is specifically caring about this issue. The government of Canada is actually one of the largest property owners in Canada. And so we need to do a review of a lot of the properties that are owned by the government to see those so that we can put them back in the market and increase housing. And the goal is to increase housing by 1 million units within the next 3 years, various ways. Another thing that we're really strongly in favor of is a foreign ownership ban for 2 years, because as some of the other candidates have mentioned, there are investors who come purchase the properties and don't live in them. And so that creates a gut in the market. There isn't enough supply, and that in and of itself is problematic. We want to defer capital gains for property owners that are owning rental properties, put them back on the market and repurchase rental properties. This will increase the amount of properties that are in the system, which is very important. One of the reasons why we're having this problem right now is because there just isn't enough supply for all the demand that's out there. So there are lots of issues that need to be tackled. I'm happy to support Ricochet by being on the board and support the government, a Conservative government, with all the different plans that we have in place for this issue.
Thank you very much. Mr. Conan-Mancini, if you please.
Hi. As somebody who just recently purchased a house in the West Island, I know more about real estate than I ever cared to know. And it was, like, I'll tell you, a struggle to find something that was affordable. It was only possible thanks to investing with my sister. And had either of us tried to do this alone, it would not have been possible. And I recognize the struggle. Even just getting a condo is even out of reach for the majority of my peers and majority of people I talk to. Housing is just so far out of reach that it's impossible to even dream of. So in order to resolve these problems, I mean, I think there's a lot of my colleagues listed a lot of the issues: the foreign buyers, the empty homes, predatory renting, basically through Airbnb, things like that. And I think that there needs to be, the Green Party believes that the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation, it used to focus on communal housing, on integrated housing, purpose-built rental housing, things like that. But now it's focusing entirely on de-risking investment into house ownership. So that means that they want to reduce the risk that banks have to lending to people who want to buy houses. And that means like in investigating your credit, finding out background checks, things like that. But that, in fact, we're realizing now, not everybody can or even needs to own a home. We should be thinking about different housing strategies. We need to think about different, like, co-op housing. We need to think about integrated housing, which is where people can afford to live in the communities in which they work, and they're living with other people who are affording to support them. And we're also restoring tax incentives for purpose-built housing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And last, Mr. Scavalegia, if you please.
Yes, well, it's a very important issue, obviously, in our community and elsewhere. I view this as having a couple of components. You have the need to increase the stock of social housing and cooperatives, and that is essentially what our national housing strategy intends to do. It has intended to do. It's the first ever national housing strategy that we brought in after we first got elected. It's a $55 billion strategy. It has many different streams. Ms. Francis was speaking about the Ricochet project. Of course, that project is receiving funding under the Rapid Housing Initiative, and the warming center that is affiliated with Ricochet received money indirectly from the federal government through the CIUS de l'Ouest de Montréal, I think, or Centre-Ville de Montréal. But then on the other side of the equation, you have the issue of housing being too expensive for people to purchase. So we have we propose some policies to help people afford the purchase of a home. We're proposing a rent-to-own program where basically a renter and a landlord would come to an agreement whereby the renter would rent for say 5 years at less than the market with the guarantee of being able to purchase later on. But also we want to create a savings vehicle similar to a combined, if you will, RRSP, TFSA to help people save to buy their first home. But the market is indeed a complex phenomenon, and it requires many different approaches.
All right, well, thank you very much, everyone.
Oui, merci. Notre prochaine question vient de Oana. Alors, récemment, M. Trudeau a partagé sur Facebook une photo à la clinique de l'Université de Québec en Outaouais avec le texte « C'est ici que nous allons terminer la bataille contre la COVID-19 dans les cliniques de vaccination et les pharmacies à travers le Canada. » Alors, comment proposez-vous de terminer la bataille contre la COVID-19? On va commencer avec M. Konamancini.
The simple answer to this would be to follow the guidelines of the health ministers. I think that while we have a leadership role as elected officials, I think that there are people who have studied this their entire lives, and that we need to listen to provincial and federal health mandates. And that doesn't mean not questioning them. And I think that we should be involved in the conversation on determining these strategies. But I still think that there is general consensus amongst countries all over the world that generally do not agree on things. And there is a consensus among them on how to deal with these things. And that is limiting contact, mask use, vaccination. Once again, I know more in the last 2 years about epidemiology than I ever thought I would know. And I think a lot of us here are mini experts as well. But unfortunately, I'm not a scientist, and I don't think anybody here is either. Maybe I think Jonathan teaches science, but I think still a lot of us would defer to the health guidelines. And I think that we really need to focus on long-term care reform. 69% of known COVID deaths happened in long-term care residents. What unfolded is it's a humanitarian crisis. Thousands of people have died due to the failure to meet the needs of these people in facilities, including seniors, people with special needs and disabilities. And we see consistently that people who have health problems, who have special needs, who would be the use of the vaccine would be, or treatment would be questionable upon their health situation, they get bumped lower to the list. I think that is honestly a little reprehensible. It's disturbing that people with mental health deficiencies for a while were not prioritized in getting the vaccine, and were even refused healthcare services because of this. So I think that we're on the way to solving this. Unfortunately, it may become endemic. It may become like the flu, and then we'll have a different strategy to deal with that. But I think we're well on the way, and I think that it takes part in listening to experts on the subject.
Merci. Le prochain va être Monsieur Gray.
Unmute, c'est ça. OK, merci. C'était une bonne question et je ne sais pas qui a la bonne réponse, mais on va essayer pareil. Tu parlais de M. Trudeau, et M. Trudeau aime beaucoup à trouver des bonnes opportunités pour prendre des belles photos. La COVID a montré plusieurs de des têtes pendant ces dernières années. Et nous, on a imposé des restrictions sur la peuple et on avait des conséquences positives et négatives. Dans notre population, il y a certaines entre nous qui avaient besoin absolument de les vaccinations en priorité. Et on a manqué la balle sur ça. Ça se peut que la vaccination est la solution pour tout le monde. On va voir. Ça va aider certainement. Mais c'est difficile de mandater un vaccin pour chaque personne, par exemple. On a réussi déjà à vacciner ici à Canada jusqu'à 80% de la population et on a dépensé ce qu'on appelle immunity collective or herd immunity. There are priority groups that need to be dealt with and taken care of in any situation, not just if a new virus attacks us, but there's supposed to be a priority list that has to be followed, which does not seem to have happened. Now, will vaccinations take care of everything? It's very possible. Will new habits take care of things? Are we going to wear masks for the rest of our lives? I certainly hope not. Cautionary principle is in order in this case. And I do hope we find a solution. And I think as Mr. Kona mentioned, it may become just a passing influenza as our population evolves along with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Le prochain sera Monsieur Leboeuf.
Oui, merci beaucoup. Quand on dit terminer la bataille contre la COVID-19, je comprends qu'on est tous, on a tous envie que ça se termine. Malheureusement, on sait pas quand ça va se terminer. Un des points qui pourraient nous aider à en finir avec le virus, c'est bien sûr la vaccination. Je pense que collectivement, on a fait un bon travail là-dessus. Une forte majorité des gens sont vaccinés. Mais la COVID a mis en lumière un problème qui était là depuis bien longtemps, bien avant la pandémie. C'est le manque de financement criant dans le système de santé, pas juste au Québec, dans toutes les provinces, en fait. C'est un enjeu qui revient à chaque élection et qui pourtant n'est jamais réglé. En fait, lorsque la Confédération a été fondée, on a donné la santé aux provinces en se disant, bon, ça ne coûterait pas très cher, c'est les ordres religieux qui vont faire le travail. Et aujourd'hui, après 100 ans plus de 150 ans de confédération, la sécularisation, c'est les provinces, l'État qui va gérer la santé. C'est un domaine qui est devenu de plus en plus coûteux. Or, les provinces n'ont pas vu leur capacité de financement suivre l'augmentation des coûts dans le système de santé. Alors, ce qu'il faudrait faire en premier lieu pour que la pandémie puisse se terminer, c'est financer adéquatement le système de santé. Nous, au Bloc québécois, on travaille très fort pour que le fédéral puisse remplir ses obligations, qui est de financer le système de santé de toutes les provinces à hauteur de 50 %. On ne demande pas le 50 %, on demande 35 % des coûts totaux. Comme toutes les provinces au Canada se sont mis ensemble pour le demander au gouvernement fédéral, ça va être une des clés pour en finir avec la pandémie. C'est un meilleur financement du système de santé. Et aussi, une des choses qu'il ne faut pas oublier, c'est que la santé est un domaine provincial. C'est Québec et les autres provinces qui gèrent eux-mêmes le système de santé. Et c'est les provinces qui sont le mieux placées pour déterminer leurs besoins, déterminer les défis auxquels elles ont affaire. Ce n'est pas à Ottawa de venir fixer des conditions uniformes à travers les provinces, alors que parfois, les conditions qu'Ottawa va fixer ne matcheront pas avec les besoins, les défis de chaque province. C'est les provinces qui doivent, avec le financement d'Ottawa, travailler fort. Il y a beaucoup de travail à faire, mais travailler par elles-mêmes pour remettre le système de santé à flot. Et une dernière chose en finissant, il faut absolument que le Canada se dote d'une capacité de production en vaccins. On a été dépendant de l'étranger pour ce qui est des vaccins. Il a fallu les importer. Si on avait pu produire nous-mêmes un vaccin, ça aurait été déjà un bon début. Merci beaucoup.
Merci. Ensuite, M. Scarpaleggia.
Oui, merci. Alors, tout d'abord, pour stopper la pandémie, pour enrayer la pandémie, il faut suivre les recommandations de la santé publique, évidemment, mais aussi il faut encourager les gens à se faire vacciner. La nouvelle variante, évidemment, exige un taux de vaccination peut-être plus élevé. Et donc, certaines provinces ont bien fait de créer des systèmes de passeport vaccinal. Le gouvernement fédéral va aider les provinces financièrement à mettre en œuvre ces systèmes de passeport vaccinal, mais aussi le fédéral, M. Trudeau, a été très clair là, que pour s'assurer que les gens se font vacciner, pour encourager une vaccination, un taux de vaccination plus élevé, il va exiger que les fonctionnaires, ceux qui travaillent dans les industries sous juridiction fédérale soient vaccinés et aussi que tous ceux et celles qui désirent monter à bord d'un avion soient complètement vaccinés, ou si ils veulent voyager en train entre intercités, par exemple. Alors, ça passe par la vaccination, mais aussi ça passe par suivre les recommandations de la santé publique. Mais aussi, il ne faut pas oublier que si nous, on est vaccinés au Canada, mais ailleurs au monde, les gens n'ont pas accès à la vaccination, bien, dans le fin fond, on n'est pas suffisamment protégé. Donc, il faut partager notre stock de vaccins avec les pays qui en ont besoin.
Merci. La prochaine, Madame Lassie.
D'accord. Donc, comment mettre fin à la pandémie? Le ministre François Legault et Dubé, ici au Québec, j'ai emprunté leurs mots, ils ont dit comment on va mettre fin à la pandémie, c'est en apprenant à vivre avec le virus. Donc, le gouvernement du Parti populaire, la première chose, c'est qu'on veut d'abord et avant tout mettre fin au climat d'alarmisme devant le virus. On veut faire la promotion d'une approche rationnelle avec des mesures qui sont fondées sur la science, protéger le plus vulnérable et soutenir les provinces justement qui vont mettre en œuvre un plan pour protéger les plus vulnérables, mais également qui vont protéger la liberté de conscience de chaque citoyen. Donc, on veut mettre fin à tout ce qui s'oppose, mettre fin à la vaccination obligatoire, les mandats, les confinements et tout ce qui vient, détruire l'économie et également gravement attaquer la liberté et le choix éclairé de tout le monde. Donc, ça crée de la division, ça crée de la discrimination. C'est un climat de coercion. Donc, beaucoup sont pris maintenant à prendre le vaccin contre leur conscience à cause des mandats obligatoires. Donc, le gouvernement du Parti populaire tient à respecter la charte et tout ce qui est liberté de conscience. Donc, voilà pour nous.
Merci. Alors, mes collègues ont tout mentionné des très importants facteurs. Je ne veux pas tous les lister, mais c'est certain qu'il faut suivre les guidelines de nos experts. Les vaccins, c'est critique. Aussi les masques, toutes les choses qu'on fait maintenant, qu'on est habitué à faire, les transferts en santé aux provinces sans restriction. C'est certain qu'on a tous dans nos plans quelque chose qui traite à ça. Mais je dirais que comme un gouvernement fédéral, nous avons une obligation d'informer le public et de donner de l'information qui est pertinente, importante et aussi éduquée. Et je pense que ça, c'est une des lacunes qui existait pendant la pandémie. Oui, c'est certain qu'au début, c'était nouveau, on ne savait pas à quoi s'attendre, mais au fur et à mesure, il faut que le gouvernement ait toutes les informations importantes et comment les relier aux gens pour que les gens ont une certaine compréhension et sait à quoi s'attendre. Et malheureusement, il y avait un grand lacune, ça manquait, le gouvernement changeait d'idée à tous les jours, on ne recevait pas de l'information de façon timely, we didn't get the information in a timely manner, and that made people very hesitant and unsure, and it's very important for the government to be able to relay the information properly so that people know what to expect and people know exactly what they should be looking for and what information they should be asking. And it's that confusion that I feel has made people reticent to follow certain guidelines. And if we had provided that information in a timely manner, in a confident manner, then I think we would have had much more buy-in to the importance of vaccines and the other measures. And so I think it's very important as a representative of the government to provide that information effectively, efficiently, and in a very timely manner.
Thank you.
Okay, our final question of this round is a very popular one. In the West Island, we are already seeing a significant effects on climate change, whether through extreme heat, poor air quality, and flooding. Green spaces offer many environmental benefits, including reducing the carbon pollution that is causing the climate crisis. Residents groups are campaigning to ensure the protection of Fairview Forest, the Technopark, and other green spaces in and around Lac-Saint-Louis. What will your party do to protect these forests and green spaces? We'll start with you, Mr. Scarpaleggia.
Yes, well, in fact, I think you're right. People are citizens are understanding and appreciating more and more the value of nature and green space as a result of the pandemic, for sure, but for other reasons, no doubt. So when you look at these green spaces like Fairview Forest or the land that surrounds the airport, it's important to understand the role that different players have in whether or not these green spaces get developed. So if you look, for example, at the Fairview Forest, it's a municipal property. The federal government is not directly involved in that space. The federal government, however, has made a priority of creating more urban parks, and in that regard, it has invested, even before announcing a sort of overarching priority, it has invested $50 million to help in creating the Grand Parc de l'Ouest, which is in the riding here of Lac-Saint-Louis. So this is, but in terms of Fairview Forest, it involves the municipal government and the municipal government zoning. As you know, it's difficult to preserve green space when it's been zoned in a certain way. One has to be careful not to invite lawsuits, and you can look at, for example, the success that those who protected Angel Woods had.
10 seconds.
Yeah. Those that protected Angel Woods had, they were very shrewd and strategic in protecting that piece of land, which it wasn't a foregone conclusion that they would be able to do that.
Thank you. Next up, Mr. Conemancini, please.
Yes, I currently advocate in my personal life for the protection of the Technopark, the Champ des Monarques, Étang Caron, and the Fairview Forests, along with the Dal Park, Falaise Saint-Jacques, many other hidden green gems all over Montreal that are constantly at risk for being developed. So I'm so glad to hear that the majority of the my colleagues here have all mentioned environment as one of their main issues that they are concerned about. And I think there was a shift in 2019 when this became actually prominent in every single debate. I honestly, I was been concerned about this for many, many years, and I was blown away in 2019 that there were so many other people on the island of Montreal and around that were concerned about this too. I mean, I'm just the million-person march was amazing to motivate people, and I hope that we can continue keeping this motivation going. Canada holds 24% of the world's wetlands. Wetlands are amazing carbon sinks. They prevent flooding, they clean water, they purify water. They're known as nature's nurseries because that's where a lot of species go to spawn. and they are hotspots for biodiversity. Maybe people won't necessarily know this, but there's a direct relationship between, an inverse relationship between amount of biodiversity and the amount of disease that is present. If you've got one type of species everywhere, then the disease can hop very quickly between the different, between the same species. But if you've got, a line that says there's a wetland here with 100 different species, that disease is not going to spread very easily. So by reducing our biodiversity, by reducing our green spaces, we're actually potentially increasing the possibility of another virus, another zoonotic virus.
Thank you very much. Next up, Ms. Francis.
Thank you. Actually, a critical question. And it's funny, my father's a botanist, and he's been composting since before composting became the thing and popular. And so I remember him putting coffee grains in all of his gardens and everything from way back when I was a little kid. So we grew up sort of always appreciating green space and gardens. And when we got married and moved to Saint Laurent, the first thing we did when we could afford to buy a home was go back to the West Island, because we love the green spaces that are available in the West Island. We love that, kids can go out and enjoy those places. We've seen during the pandemic when people were stuck indoors, the amount of green space that was available to them if they were in cities was much less. And those of us who were lucky to be in areas in the West Island were able to enjoy those green spaces. And it's critical, and it's something that's very important. And as my colleague Milan was mentioning, biodiversity, we've seen what's happened with the ash borer trees, the number of trees that have had to be cut down because we allowed a species to come in, and we have so many of these ash borer trees as opposed to ash trees, as opposed to this biodiversity that exists when you have these wetlands and green spaces. And I think we've seen on the West Island the number of trees that have had to be cut down. And so it's very clear that we have to be able to support that kind of biodiversity and support those green spaces and support the groups that are working, again, volunteers, most of them, to really saving these areas and to bringing to the public this knowledge and this awareness of these spaces that are so much more than just, a pretty park or a green space, but really do need our protection and our care. And again, we look at the fact that we're on an island surrounded by water, and we're dumping wastewater, thank you, into the lakes, and that's going to affect everything around us. So we have a lot of work to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gray, please.
I would, and I think Mr. Kona-Mancini has to come over to this side, and because we already have his party involved in ours, incorporated in ours. This issue is at the moment the only issue. It's the largest issue we have to deal with, and without it, COVID's going to pale in comparison. Nationally or federally, I should say, we have a huge plan, and it's ending fossil fuels, not just and capping production, not just taxing carbon emissions, because you could tax carbon emissions till the cows came home, and you'd end up dead and suffocated, which is pointless. We would encourage as well, the NDP would encourage the support of green businesses. We would like to transfer tax credits and tax incentives, or flat out other types of incentives, to green initiatives, eco-sustainable green companies, no longer supporting and giving tax breaks to fossil fuel emitting companies. What else did I want to say there? Locally, we were just at the Fairview Forest, and it's beautiful. I had seen it there, but I have never walked through it, and it was outstanding. Personally, where I teach science and technology, we years ago started a green club for the kids to get involved in planting and understanding and information sessions. I also was mainly involved in establishing a large community events, seniors, students, so they could learn that way. And these natural environments are not just important for our environment, they're very good for our mental health states, as Ms. Francis might attest to.
Thank you, Mr. Gray.
I'm done. Thanks.
Next, Mr. Leboeuf, s'il te plaît.
Oui, merci. Je suis allé visiter la forêt Fairview dimanche passé. C'est l'organisme Sauvons la forêt Fairview qui m'avait invité. J'ai visité pendant près d'1 heure avec une guide qui m'a expliqué l'importance de la forêt, qui m'a expliqué les différentes espèces d'arbres qu'on pouvait y retrouver, les différentes espèces d'oiseaux. Alors, je crois que c'est vraiment, on a la chance dans Lac-Saint-Louis d'avoir un espace naturel tout à fait exceptionnel. Et la protection des espaces verts doit se faire, oui, dans Lac-Saint-Louis, mais partout à travers le Québec. Ça va passer par une stratégie nationale pour lutter contre l'étalement urbain, parce que les espaces verts nous rendent des services essentiels. Ils diminuent le bruit, la pollution, ils évitent les inondations. Il y a tout un tas de services qu'une forêt peut rendre qu'on ne voit pas nécessairement. C'est vrai que ça va être difficile pour les candidats fédéraux de travailler sur cet enjeu, puisqu'il y a le municipal qui s'en mêle, le provincial, le fédéral. Donc, il y a plusieurs champs de compétences qui s'empilent et qui pourraient aider, en fait, pour la protection de la forêt. Une des choses qu'on pourrait faire, c'est mettre des règles plus strictes pour le développement de terrain pour l'immobilier, s'assurer que les espaces verts uniques ou essentiels ne soient pas détruits, que ce soit en ville ou dans les régions agricoles ou plus éloignées. Une autre chose qu'on pourrait faire aussi, ça serait de promouvoir la protection des milieux naturels et aussi promouvoir l'importance des milieux naturels à l'école. Inviter des classes à aller faire des visites de forêt ou de milieux humides, sensibiliser à l'importance des milieux naturels. Pour la forêt Fairview en elle-même, une des options qui pourrait être envisagée, ça serait d'ajouter l'espace de la forêt Fairview au projet de grand parc dans l'Ouest. Il pourrait y avoir peut-être une extension du projet. On pourrait les relier peut-être avec des pistes cyclables ou un réseau de transport en commun. Je pense que ça serait une bonne option à envisager pour la forêt, la relier au parc de l'Ouest.
Merci beaucoup. La dernière, Mme Lassie, s'il te plaît.
Au niveau du Parti populaire, on va prioriser la mise en œuvre de mesures concrètes, pratiques pour maintenir notre sol, notre eau propre et essayer également de réduire un certain climat d'alarmisme quant au réchauffement de la planète qui est, encore une fois, pas nécessairement fondé. Le climat a toujours changé et l'être humain a su s'adapter. C'est pas pour dire qu'on doit être irresponsable, on doit demeurer responsable, mais pas toujours en protégeant notre économie et en gardant le pays prospère. Donc, voilà pour nous.
Merci beaucoup. Okay. Now we received a lot of questions as well from individuals for individual candidates from the public. We have them directed straight to the candidates, but others may respond as well. We'll give everyone 2 minutes. This question is for Jonathan Gray. The NDP platform includes 100% zero emissions vehicle sales by 2035. Mining the minerals for electric vehicle batteries is energy intensive and will turn and require a lot of expenditure of fossil fuels. In the Laurentians, for example, in many other parts of Canada, there are conflicts between citizens and who want to protect their communities and their companies who want to extract the minerals. How would the NDP government resolve this? For other candidates, how would your party resolve these kinds of conflicts? We'll start with you, Mr. Gray.
Okay, thank you. It's a very important question and it's been asked over and over again. 100% zero emission would be a wonderful goal to attain. And it can't just be turned over one day. It's a transition, but we will get there. And the mining of materials, if we compare the two between mining materials for electric vehicles, batteries for electric vehicles, versus the mining of fossil fuels for carbon burning plants, vehicles. On one hand, you've mined resources for a battery, which does not emit. Whereas on the other hand, you've mined, so you've burned fossil fuels in the mining process. You've extracted a resource to put it into an object or a vehicle, which will continue polluting the environment. So in the transition of mining for renewables or elements that are needed for battery production, we can continue and use those for further extraction of other minerals. Once we have these established, we recycle batteries. The prospect of being able to recycle our renewables is just, it's endless, and it could reduce entirely the need for extracting other materials and destroying places like the Laurentians, for example, which would be a shame. It's a beautiful place. We need to go there soon. Again, thank you.
Thank you. Madame Lassie, how would you resolve conflict?
En fait, ça démontre vraiment un peu le... comment je peux dire? Je peux répondre en français, j'espère. En fait, c'est ça, c'est un vrai conflit. Donc, il n'y a pas... Je ne crois pas qu'il y a une solution parfaite. Et c'est justement pourquoi le Parti populaire tient à tenir compte de ces compagnies-là qui enrichissent l'économie, mais en demeurant responsables. En fait, il y a une réelle ironie à polluer pour créer quelque chose de non polluant. Je comprends qu'il y a le recyclage, mais honnêtement, on n'a pas encore trouvé de solution parfaite pour protéger ces communautés-là, mais il faut protéger l'économie, sinon si on trouve des solutions qui vont nous ruiner, on n'ira nulle part. Donc ça, c'est notre position.
Merci beaucoup. Merci. Mr. Scarpalegio, would you like to say anything about conflict?
Yeah, well, indeed, you know, this is the case that new technologies, you know, do require sometimes, you know, significant amounts of energy. You know, you just look at computers. They on the surface of it, they're a very clean product, but they demand a lot of electricity, and producing chips demands a lot of water for cleaning, and because they have to be pristine. But in terms of energy, you know, we've committed to creating a zero emission electricity grid nationally by 2035. So that would mean that you know, new energy demand would be met by clean electricity that is not produced using or does not create emissions in its production. So that's, I think, one aspect of the solution. But you know, when you get into energy, you know, you have complex trade-offs. There's no doubt about it.
All right, thank you very much. Ms. Francis, do you have anything to say about how we resolve this conflict?
Actually, I'd like to bring it back again to the fact that the way information is provided to people, it'd be nice to depoliticize this particular issue, because we've seen so much confusion, you know, buy electric cars, no, don't buy electric cars, they don't actually help, yes, they do help. And so I think it's very important for government, especially the federal government that oversees a lot of these programs, to come up with sound advice to people, real information that people can look into and that's justified, and that they can actually go back and understand where the information is coming from, so that this issue is not, you know, something that's a political football thrown one way or another by different parties. And unfortunately, there is almost too much information available. People can Google anything and you don't know where the information is coming from. And if they've seen a site that says something, they tend to believe it. And it's really important that the federal government is able to put information out that is effective, efficient, true, backed up, and explain to people why a policy is coming into force. And I just feel that the whole thing with electric cars has really been befuddled and confused people. And so people don't know what to do. Are we hurting the environment by buying electric cars or not? So it would be really good if we could depoliticize this particular issue. And I feel that way about a lot of the environmental issues. It shouldn't be a political game. We, you know, most of the candidates, we're not politicians, maybe with the exception of Mr. Scarpaleggia. Most of us have never been in office, and we're doing this because we really want to help. we love our communities. We want to do what's best for our communities. And when it comes to the environment, that's truly how I feel. I want my kids to grow up having a future and having their kids have a future. And it would just be nice if a lot of these issues were really not political. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Francis. Mr. Konamancini, if you may.
Not often you'd see a Green Party candidate agree completely with the Conservative Party candidate, but wow, that was very well said. And I agree that communication is, especially scientific communication, has been a major problem for many years. And that's where it comes to the distrust when it comes to medical field and environment and everything. It's just blindly obeying authority without understanding why or when we came to the decision. There needs to be an openness in politics, in science. There needs to be a clearer breakdown without, scientific jargon and medical jargon to just, distract from people from actually understanding the core issue. But that being said, I think that we are at the cusp of developing very, very rapidly new green technology. And if we may be lagging a bit in this new era of technology, and especially since the Canadian investment in research and development has been declining for years. It's only 1.7% of the GDP, and it's the lowest in the OECD, which is the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. So there's a very likely chance that when we start investing in these technologies, while they might be a little bit dirty to begin with, they might be, we're going to see like there's conflict, where you're going to dig things up. Is it going to cause problems environmentally? Are you tearing down the forest to dig up minerals, things like that? There's a very likely possibility because of this demand, and if we invest into these green technologies, that we're going to develop a new product, like compressed air batteries are going to be possibly a thing. We're steps away from getting leap forward in technology, and we need to invest into that infrastructure.
Thank you. Monsieur Leboeuf.
Oui, merci. Une solution pour peut-être pas régler, mais essayer de régler les conflits où les matières sont extraites, ce serait de poser des normes éthiques aux compagnies qui vendent les voitures ou qui vendent les produits au Canada. Une autre chose qui pourrait être faite, ce serait de développer le potentiel minier au Canada et même au Québec. Au Québec, on a un grand potentiel en termes d'extraction du lithium. Donc, plutôt que d'aller extraire des matières premières dans des pays où il y a des conflits, on peut les extraire chez nous. Et au Québec, on est chanceux, on a du lithium, on a de l'aluminium, il y a des capacités de recyclage très importantes. Mais la voiture électrique est parfois donnée comme la solution magique à tous nos problèmes. Honnêtement, ça peut aider parfois, ça peut être une solution de transition, mais ce n'est pas une solution magique parce que si la voiture n'émet pas de pollution lorsqu'elle roule, elle en émet lorsqu'elle est construite. Et aussi, le modèle qu'elle promeut n'est pas viable parce que ça reste une voiture et ça crée de l'étalement urbain, ça crée des infrastructures qui dépendent de la voiture, alors qu'il faudrait plutôt changer les mentalités, changer les modes de déplacement, miser plus sur le transport en commun, et notamment le transport interrégional comme le train. Au Canada, on a un très, très, très grand manque de trains. Si on se compare à l'Europe ou même aux États-Unis qui sont en train de construire des TGV, il y a un grand retard que le Canada a accumulé en termes de transport interrégional, et le gouvernement fédéral pourrait diminuer la pollution due au transport s'il investissait dans le train, si Via Rail était mieux financé, s'il y avait des nouvelles lignes qui ouvraient, ça aiderait beaucoup. Et si on pouvait aussi électrifier le transport, au Québec, on a la chance d'avoir Hydro-Québec qui fournit une électricité propre, renouvelable, et ça depuis beaucoup de décennies. Donc, électrification des transports et transport interrégional, ça serait des bonnes solutions en plus de la voiture électrique, mais qui n'est pas une solution magique.
Merci beaucoup.
Oui, merci. Notre prochaine question est pour M. Scarpaleggia. Alors, les libéraux ont annoncé un plan visant à réglementer les émissions de l'industrie pétrolière et gazière afin d'atteindre des émissions zéro d'ici 2050. Cela implique-t-il un plafond d'émissions pour le pétrole et le gaz? Si oui, comment serait-il fixé et comment prévoyez-vous le faire respecter? Pour les autres candidats, votre parti imposera-t-il un plafond d'émissions pour le pétrole et le gaz? Et si oui, comment serait-il fixé et comment prévoyez-vous le faire respecter? On commence avec M. Scarpaleggia.
Oui, effectivement, on parle d'un projet de réglementation. Alors, tout projet de réglementation, comme vous savez, doit passer à travers une phase de consultation, évidemment avec l'industrie et avec d'autres parties prenantes, comme les environnementalistes et le public. Et une fois qu'un projet de réglementation est conçu, il est présenté et pour obtenir des commentaires supplémentaires et à un moment donné, le projet est mis en œuvre, est appliqué et comme tout règlement, il y a des conséquences si on enfreint les règlements. Alors, évidemment, c'est un engagement, mais c'est un processus assez compliqué, mais en bout de ligne, on va se retrouver avec un projet de réglementation pour réduire les émissions provenant du secteur pétrolier et gazier.
Merci. Monsieur Leboeuf?
Oui, il faut se rappeler que le Canada est le 4e producteur mondial de pétrole et le 3e exportateur et que la production des sables bitumineux, on prévoit qu'elle augmentera jusqu'en 2045. Alors, il faut non seulement changer les mentalités, mais il faut aussi changer la structure économique du pays en lui-même parce que le Canada est un État pétrolier et son économie repose sur l'exploitation des ressources pétrolières, à tel point que le quart de tous les gaz à effet de serre produits au Canada viennent de l'industrie pétrolière. Et le gouvernement fédéral a investi depuis 2015 près de 74 milliards de dollars en crédit d'impôt, en subventions directes à l'industrie pétrolière. Donc, si on veut régler le problème des gaz à effet de serre, il faut plafonner la production, plafonner les émissions, mais aussi plafonner les exportations. Parce que si on plafonne au Canada, mais qu'on continue d'exporter ailleurs dans le monde, ça ne règle pas le problème parce que les gaz à effet de serre vont juste être produits ailleurs. Alors, il faut plafonner les trois, production, émissions, exportation. Et il faut mettre des lois contraignantes aussi. Je sais que notre collègue Christina Michaud du Bloc québécois avait proposé la loi C-245, qui est une loi avec des mesures contraignantes pour le gouvernement pour qu'il atteigne ses cibles de réduction de gaz à effet de serre. Cette loi-là a été refusée par le gouvernement libéral qui ont préféré la loi C-12 qui, elle, dit qu'elle veut réduire les émissions de gaz à effet de serre, mais n'impose pas de normes contraignantes. Alors, il faut que le gouvernement décide lui-même, et il faut le faire avec une conscience pour les générations futures, de réduire la production, réduire les exportations et réduire les émissions. Et ça, il faut le faire dès maintenant.
Merci. Ensuite, M. Gray.
Merci. C'est bien dit. Oui, avec le NPD, on veut mettre un cap sur la production, comme M. Leboeuf a dit aussi, et non seulement mettre des impôts sur les émissions gaz à effet de serre. Ça ne fait pas de sens. Et l'exportation de l'huile et gaz, oui, ça va continuer à augmenter la pollution ailleurs, mais pas ici. Mais nous sommes tous dans un gros pot. Alors, sur la Terre, ça va transférer ailleurs. So I would also like to say that we will continue to need gas and oil for many years to come. But I think there's a fear of, especially out west, that, in the transition, everything's just going to shut off. We'll have no more petroleum production. We'll have no more jobs. That's not necessarily the case. If we transition in a responsible way, we will leave that behind like the dinosaurs and move to a healthier and more sustainable economy with responsible technology as well. And we don't need pipelines running through sensitive areas, destroying the environment and polluting waters of indigenous lands, which we are on now too, by the way. I guess I'll I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Francis?
Thank you. I'll just add that this is a not just a global problem that requires a global solution, but again, it really requires many, many facets. And my colleagues have mentioned several things that we have to take into consideration. And it's definitely clear that we have to start reducing and transitioning. That's without a doubt. I think what people don't understand is that certain parties and the Liberal government, we've seen this, they have put levels that sound wonderful but are unattainable, and they've done nothing to actually meet any of our climate levels in the past. And so jacking up the number of leaders that they want to decrease and not being able to actually meet the levels that we used to have, it doesn't make any sense. The other thing that we have to understand is that Canada produces the most green and best products. If we remove ourselves from the market immediately, what's going to happen is that those needs are going to be filled by countries that don't have labor standards, that don't produce in an effective or efficient or green way. And so we have a responsibility as a global player, as a G7 nation, as one of the best countries in terms of our labor standards, to assist in that transition, to play a very important role in providing the world with the cleanest energy available in order to be able to transition properly. And so when we say we're going to take Canada off completely, we're leaving a gap for other players, Venezuela, Saudi Arabia, all of these countries that don't have the standards that we have to fill that gap. And if people think that that gap's not going to get filled, that's not very realistic. And so we need a government that's in place to look at the entire problem, including the economy, and fix this responsibly in a timely manner going forward, using Canadian resources, Canadian technology, Canadian innovation. We're a very innovative country, and as was mentioned, we're coming up with new technologies. That's what Canada is all about, and we shouldn't be shutting that out.
Thank you. Merci. Et finalement, non, excuse-moi, prochainement, Monsieur Kona Mancini.
So we've just had 6 years of a Liberal government. And as Anne said, fortunately, they make a lot of promises, like election reform, that don't end up reaching fruition. Alongside their climate targets, currently emissions are 21% above 1990 levels, which is when we all started recognizing globally that this was a problem. Canada has never achieved a climate target that we've set for ourselves, which is kind of strange. You'd think that the things that we'd set for ourselves would be attainable, but unfortunately that's not the case. Canada has an emissions reduction target that is well below global peers currently. The Green Party would obviously increase that target. The greenhouse gases have risen every year since 2016. The Liberals have bought a pipeline. They have increased subsidies to fossil fuels. And now Canada is one of the top 3 worst per capita greenhouse gas emitters in the G20. Yeah, all this to say that I agree with my colleague in the NDP that this is, we recognize that oil and gas are going to be needed for a very long time. Probably the next, in the foreseeable future. We don't currently have a way of transporting energy that will be able to meet the needs of people in remote areas. I like that the Liberals took the Green Party idea of creating a pan-electric grid that would allow people who don't have access to renewable energy, there's very little sun or there's very little wind, to access that green technology, green power from all across Canada. And I think by reducing the subsidies, creating the pan-electric grid, by creating a green freight strategy, which is International Council on Green Freight on Transportation, because transportation is second behind energy as one of the largest greenhouse gas emitters. And then the third is agriculture, which we would promote the classification of greater ease to get biological. Thank you.
Thank you. Et finalement, Madame Lassie.
Oui, donc pour le Parti populaire, au niveau fédéral, on abolirait les taxes sur le carbone et on permettrait aux provinces d'eux-mêmes fixer leur cible si elles le souhaitent. Et donc, on se retirait aussi de l'accord parce que les cibles sont irréalistes. Et je peux rejoindre un peu Anne quand elle dit que si le Canada on produit une énergie verte et responsable, et si c'est pas nous qui la produisons, c'est sûr que le vide va être comblé par des pays qui ne respectent pas ou qui n'ont pas de standards et des normes comme les nôtres. Donc, ça, c'est notre position.
Merci.
Okay, to keep things a little bit spicy and unscripted, we are taking one last question from our YouTube chat. Leslie asks in the chat, in light of climate change possibly making some parts of the world inhospitable, do you think Canada should welcome more immigrants and create more programs to get them working and well integrated into Canadian society? I'll give you 10 seconds to think about it, and we'll start with Mr. Gray, if you may.
Sure. Am I unmuted? Yes, I am. Okay, hi. Yes, that is a very important question, and we sort of dealt with that last presentation. And I think we came across something like that when we were speaking about Afghanistan and the refugees that needed rescuing, and did we have an ability to help them, give them security in our own country? Yes, we did, and we should continue to do so. Do we have space? Do we have the means to train and host people in our country? Absolutely, we do. And I think it is very important, and we will benefit greatly from other people's viewpoints, experiences, and I'd like to say that I would like to say that it is a shame that, for example, we have restrictions on doctors in our province because of the way they look, for example, whereas they may be the best surgeon, but they are discouraged from, for example, coming here. If you get what I'm reaching at, that is unacceptable. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Francis, if you may.
Yes, well,
sorry, Mr. Scavallo, Ms. Francis.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry about that. It's okay.
It's okay. I think Francis and I are used to this. So I'll just say that, my parents are immigrants, and I think this country was built on immigrants and immigration. And so it's critical that we not just accept refugees and people who are struggling, but also people who want to come here to build a better future. It's what we offer. It's what Canada is all about. And I'm so pleased that my parents picked Canada because I love this country. We have serious labor shortages. We're seeing that right now. And so there are definitely ways to bring people in, allow them to learn the skills that are needed to fill the gaps that are here. The other thing that we would be working on as a Conservative government is making equivalencies more reasonable for people. People come with medical degrees, have worked in countries for years as doctors, and come here and have to go through their schooling all over again when they have families to raise, and when their expertise may be more easily recognizable. Perhaps the program with which we bring people here and allow them to have their equivalency should be, again, streamlined. Information should be much more easily available. People should know what it is they're coming for, and should be able to have the opportunity to take the skills that they've already learned elsewhere and bring them up to the standards that we may have here that are different, but not make it so onerous and so difficult on them, so that we can bring them here and have them being contributing to society right away, able to use the skills that they've learned elsewhere. I just think that that's such a critical thing for people. In fact, it affects their mental health when they come here after having spent years studying and working to come here to be told that their degrees are less than useful and that they have to start all over again. It's very discouraging for people. So immigration, it's critical to our country, and thank you. And we really should be streamlining it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Conemancini, if you may.
Yeah, I really think that we do need just more people in general, whether they be refugees or immigrants or foreign workers. Absolutely, without a doubt, we're a declining population. Canada is, the Canadians are not replacing themselves with the 2.1 or so kids that are needed per family in order to be able to replace our population. And we need an influx of people. Canada doesn't really accept that many people as refugees. It's about, I think, 64,000 or so a year, maybe a bit more with the inland borders, I think closer to maybe 100,000 or so, which isn't that much when you consider the population of Canada. And it isn't that much when you consider that the amount of people that we need. Just looking at the demographics of the generations, you can see that there's going to be a huge dearth of people who are able to work, who are going to be retiring very shortly. And yeah, it's unfortunate that the climate crisis is causing even more refugees, as a lot of people in the Middle East, their main form of subsistence is farming, and a lot of times those farming areas are very sensitive to the slightest changes in temperature, in humidity, and stuff like that. So you end up with a lot of displaced farmers who, you know, end up joining things like ISIS. Who would you rather a displaced, 16-year-old farmer go to? Canada or ISIS? I know it sounds extreme, but this is the reality for some people. When you've got a secure organization that's providing food, shelter, water, it's a no-brainer if you need to travel all the way across the world or just go to the next village. Thank you.
Mr. Scarpaleggia, if you may.
Yes, well, I think yes, immigration is very it's very key to our economic development. It always has been the driving force, I guess, of our economic development. I was reading somewhere that 33% of all business owners with paid staff in Canada are immigrants, and 25% of those who work in the healthcare sector. So it's pretty clear the important role that immigration plays in our economic development, but also our quality of life. The whole question of climate refugees is a very big one that the world may be facing in years to come. But I can say quite proudly that our Canada has some of the most ambitious immigration targets of any developing country. So we're a welcoming country. We have a good immigration system. It has integrity, and it's important that it maintains that integrity so that it can continue to have the support of the population. So the system, I mean. So yeah, immigration is the key. It's key to helping the economic recovery post-COVID, and it's a priority for our government and many governments in the past.
Thank you very much. Madame Lassie, s'il te plaît.
Oui, donc pour le Parti populaire, bon, le Canada est un pays accueillant. Moi aussi, je suis issue de l'immigration. Je suis née au Canada, mais mes parents ont été accueillis. Et pour nous, ce qui nous importe, c'est vraiment que les gens issus, les immigrants soient bien intégrés dans le pays. Donc pour ça, on veut assurer une immigration responsable, limitée, prioriser les immigrants économiques pour qu'ils puissent contribuer à l'économie du pays. Donc, c'est sûr qu'on baisserait les cibles fixées par le gouvernement fédéral actuel, mais en faisant ça, on va permettre à tous ceux qui entrent au Canada de vivre d'une façon prospère et de bien être intégrés dans le pays. Donc, voilà comment nous, on le voit.
Merci beaucoup. Et Monsieur Leboeuf.
Oui, merci. D'abord, pour ce qui est des réfugiés climatiques, je crois qu'il y aura un travail à faire en amont, c'est-à-dire on pourrait aider les pays qui sont le plus touchés par les changements climatiques pour les aider à s'adapter, les aider à trouver des solutions. On pourrait notamment envoyer des fonds pour aider au reboisement dans certains pays d'Afrique. Il y a beaucoup de progrès qui peuvent être faits à ce niveau-là. Si jamais les réfugiés climatiques continuent d'arriver au Canada, je crois que c'est important qu'au Québec, on accueille le nombre de personnes qui nous est permis par notre capacité d'intégration, qui, à bien des niveaux, est déjà atteinte. Le Québec accueille beaucoup d'immigrants et il nous faut beaucoup de ressources pour la francisation, pour l'intégration des immigrants. Alors, si jamais... moi, je pense que le gouvernement du Québec devrait pouvoir gérer l'entièreté de son immigration parce qu'on a une situation linguistique et culturelle particulière au Québec et c'est Québec qui est le mieux géré, qui est le mieux placé pour gérer l'immigration qui se fait au Québec. Surtout aussi également que l'immigration n'est pas une solution magique pour régler la pénurie de main-d'œuvre. Il y a beaucoup d'autres choses qu'on peut faire pour aider ce problème-là. Par exemple, aider certains aînés qui viennent juste de prendre leur retraite à rester à mi-temps sur le marché du travail ou aider les jeunes à trouver un emploi. Et aussi, parfois, s'il y a trop d'immigration, ça peut créer des problèmes. Par exemple, la pénurie de logement qu'il y a à Montréal. Si on fait venir trop de gens en même temps, ça va juste accentuer la pénurie de logement. Donc, il faudrait que Québec puisse gérer l'immigration qui se passe à Québec. Comme ça, on va pouvoir mieux accueillir les immigrants, mieux les intégrer et mieux les franciser.
Merci beaucoup.
Oui, merci. Alors, nous sommes à la fin de notre soirée. Alors, je tente à remercier nos candidats et nos candidates pour leur participation ce soir. Aussi, merci à tous ceux et celles qui ont soumis des questions pour nos candidats. Je veux aussi remercier mes collègues pour leurs efforts dans la planification de cet événement. Un lien vers un sondage est disponible dans le chat sur YouTube ainsi que dans la description du vidéo. Nous vous invitons à remplir le formulaire pour partager votre expérience de cet événement. Ça, c'est pour tout le monde qui nous regarde en direct. Et par la suite aussi, n'oubliez pas que le jour des élections est lundi le 20 septembre de 9h le matin à 9h30 le soir. Vérifiez vos cartes de vote pour assurer que vous vous rendez dans le bon bureau de vote.
Yes, a big thank you to all our candidates for participating tonight. Thank you to everyone who submitted questions to our candidates. I also like to thank the TQS team for planning this event. As a link in the survey, in the chat on YouTube, as well as in the description in the video. We invite everyone to fill out and share their experience of the event. Don't forget, yes, Election Day is Monday, September 20th from 9:30 a.m. to 9:30 p.m. Check your voting cards to make sure that you're